Yes.
okay. All right. So
So,
my husband has joined. So I sent him the
well,
sorry.
does he want to, join and talk about some of your story with you? That's okay, but it's not, that's fine if you would like
Yeah.
that. But your friends and family, we want them, oh, he already left. We want them to be able to support you from our chat room.
Oh, okay.
www. You want me to text it to you again so you can?
No, I have it, but
Oh, okay.
yes, I think I shared
All
the
right, perfect. We'll probably
yeah,
start to see them there. Let me see.
yes.
Okay. Oh, here he
Oh,
comes.
he came up.
Yes. All right. All right, we are live right here. The Matrix is live on another Thursday on primal4k.com. And before we begin and introduce our amazing special guest for tonight, I do want to thank DLC for bridging the way to our show with some great music. And before him, it was Yard Fusion. Before him, it was Tracy Virgo. Thursdays are always amazing. Every day is amazing on Primal, where we really take care of our diaspora as far as entertainment in every facet, music, sports, talk, you name it. So today, well, first before we begin, this is the Matrix again, and Mom, I wanted to introduce you. People don't really need it to, be introduced to you, but nonetheless, how are you today, Mom?
I'm well, my dear, and yourself?
Very good. I'm good myself. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest for this evening. She's a trailblazer. She's a warrior. Lots of different roles and titles. Her name is Dr. JaquelineDeon Simmonds Goulborne. She was actually uh, featured in The Gleaner on April 1st. She has done critical work in terms of kidney care through her own journey through developing lupus. Back in September of 1998, she started to have some symptoms. So she's well versed in nursing and sociology, all kinds of things. In fact, you know what? I'd like to take a moment before we allow her to talk about herself to read what the Gleaner said about her this month because it's pretty extraordinary and it will explain a lot before we jump in. And I encourage anybody in the chat to ask questions, hail her up, all of those things. So she is described as an eclectic biopsychosocial professional. Her work spans through sociology, gerontology, nursing, disaster management, which is really important, obviously, after what happened in Jamaica in October, and organizational systems. She holds 5 master's degrees. When does she sleep? I don't know. We'll have to ask her. She has a PhD in human and organizational systems and over a decade of certifications, including evidence based coaching from Fielding Graduate University. Her academic and professional journey is as expansive as it is impactful. So today her role is a social health advocate. Dr. Goulborne, would you like to explain more about what that is and how you came to take on that role?
Okay, so I'm half health and half social science,
Mm-hmm.
and including that, so I have my shortest work life in terms of active duty is nursing, but that
Yes.
forms the basis of how I think, I behave, I respond. So nursing is a caring profession, and you really are excellent at it when you understand it's not about you, it's about the patient. And
Yes.
so that piece. Having said that, I have had a life that caused me to access healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So my longest work in terms of staying for a long time is is the Faculty of Medical Sciences, where I
Yeah.
empower especially medical doctors to become the best that they can be. And
Yes.
so the my eclectic nature speaks to that. So I understand that there is no good health without social health. But that's a slogan that already exists.
Mm.
Not social health. There's no good health without mental health. So my slogan is there's no good mental health without social health. And I chose that because for people who have experienced mental illness, they are made to feel less than. The
Indeed.
stigma is so great, and
Yes.
they are just as bright or even brighter than people who have never experienced mental illness. And the the ability or the opportunity, I'm using the right word, the opportunity to get a mental illness is 1 in 4. So they are to become mentally ill at even once in your life is a very easy thing to happen. Illness is no respect of persons. And so
Why is
my
that?
husband,
You're
yeah,
telling an
yes, go ahead.
amazing story, and I hate to stop you, but there are so many
Yes,
points where I wanted to want
yes,
you to
sure.
elaborate. Why
Yes.
is that? Why is it so easy, or sometimes why is mental health something that shouldn't be stigmatized and something that basically is in every household and impacts
It's
our overall health?
I like it. I like what you said. Why is it in every household? Because it is.
Because it is what generates it, what
Yes,
causes it. Because
yes,
people say, well,
yes,
not me, it's
yes,
not in my
yes, yes,
genetics, it's not in my,
yes,
or I haven't had
yes.
any childhood trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Hmm.
So it's really not about trauma. It's multifaceted or multifactorial.
Mm.
So different factors can cause one
Mm.
to become mentally unwell. It could be just a moment of extreme anger and you flip. It could be stress. It could be having something like lupus that affects you from head to toe. It could be being in kidney failure that cause your
Yeah.
toxicity level to be so high that you experience some bout of mental illness. It could be that you have diabetes, and when the blood
Yes.
sugar goes especially low, you
Low.
can become delirious. So there are
Yes.
so many factors that could cause one to become mentally ill.
Wow.
But
Well explained.
stress, whatever stresses the system to a point. So I'm a disaster manager. So whatever stresses the system to a point that overwhelms your ability to cope can
Yes.
lead to mental illness. Yes.
So you said you're a disaster manager.
Yes.
I thought that disaster management had
Uh-huh.
to do with natural disasters. Am I wrong? Does it have to do with?
It has to do with anything that could cause a disaster.
Okay.
So I worked with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management in Jamaica. My responsibility at that time was to prepare the nation for response. And so we do have a lot of hazards. So we misrepresent disaster by calling them hurricane and flood and so on. They are hazards. So any hazard can cause your ability, overwhelm your ability to cope, and then that becomes a disaster. So anything can become a disaster. But we are familiar with hurricanes and storms and earthquakes and floods and everything we have in Jamaica. And so, from that perspective, most people think disaster and they think hurricane and they think all of that. But you could have a hurricane that does not overwhelm your ability to cope, and therefore it's not a disaster. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
so you could have a flood and it's not a disaster because you're so prepared that
Absolutely.
when it comes, it doesn't overwhelm your ability to cope.
Hmm.
So the
Hmm.
essence of a disaster is anything that happens that overwhelms your ability to cope. And
Okay.
so that and that could equal mental illness.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yes. Mom, did you have anything to add or ask before we continue, allowing her to talk about her journey?
Well, I would ask about the preparedness of Jamaica leading up to Melissa. That you could consider a major disaster. Am I correct?
Yes, Melissa was a major disaster. We have one, we have never in the history of hurricanes
Hmm.
seen a hurricane at the magnitude of Melissa.
Hmm.
So a category 5 hurricane is the largest hurricane that is recorded. And Melissa topped that. Melissa was above that. So right now it is still recorded as a Cat 5, but it is not a Cat 5. It is the most devastating hurricane ever. And so we are not built to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. So when it entered Westmoreland, which is Negril and so on, to the west, that
Hmm.
point, it devastated Westmoreland. But it did not just devastate Westmoreland. It devastated St. Elizabeth and St. Anne and St. James and Trelawney and so on. But the major damage is in St. Anne. And so that clearly was a disaster. People lost their homes. And when I say the homes, I mean the entire house. People lost their vehicle, people lost their lives, and people are still reeling from that. When I saw it, I said, this is not going to recover in another 30 years. So we are not built to that level. And therefore, you would have catastrophic damage.
Absolutely. Has there
Yes.
been anything that any ideals or strategies you've been able to implement with your authority and experience that has made it a little bit easier even after you saw the destruction?
Well, on a personal level,
Hmm.
yes. But that is, and it continues. So, provide help and assistance for people. But more needs to be done within the wider scope in terms of bolstering or structure. And so, in Westmoreland, for example, there are lots of um, houses that you move. So you could pick them up and move them to another place. So you have those. You also have a lot of wooden structure and with galvanized roofing. So those are some of the things that need to be improved when you start to rebuild so that next time, because we do live in the hurricane belt,
Hmm.
that you are at that place to improve what
I
is
see.
happening.
I see.
Yes.
All right. So you are a nurse. By education, you are a nurse. You
Mhm.
were exposed to so many other things like gerontology and sociology. You're a social worker, in my opinion, as well. You have a grasp on connection, community, the social determinants of health. Why is
Yes.
it crucial to have exposure and experience about all of these different things to really meet the needs of people and really understand how culture works? Why should you have experience in all of these things like you to have a better
Okay.
outcome?
All right. So people say I'm a high achiever. I s-
Just a little. Five master's degrees and a PhD. Well,
Right? Five.
yeah, yeah,
I think
perhaps.
so.
That's an understatement. Yes.
Right. So that being said, I
Hmm.
like I like learning. I like I like learning. And
What do you like about it before we begin? Sorry. What do you like about learning?
but well, I like to know. I don't
Just,
like to not know.
yeah,
All right.
I like
So
that.
I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
I like to be in control. And so true. Believe me, it's true. I like to be in control. I I understand that you can't control what you don't know,
Yes, ma'am.
right? You
Hmm.
can't control what you don't know.
Hmm.
And I absolutely love people. I love people. People are the most disgusting, but they are the most interesting.
So true. So true. High five.
Yes,
The
yes.
daily
And so,
struggle. Yeah.
yes, yes, every day. And
Hmm.
so being empowered, so gerontology in particular. So we say you have on record that I have 5 masters, and I do. And I think it is really 6. But I can't find the paper for the other one. But I know I have it. So they when I did nursing, I I did nursing out of respect for my mother. My
Hmm.
mother was a teacher,
Hmm.
and I wanted to teach. So that's my bottom line. I always want to teach.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to teach. And so I am her first daughter, her second child. And she
Okay.
said to me, no, you're not going to become a teacher. You are going to become a nurse.
Okay.
And and so I tried to get out of that. I tried many things, but that was my destiny. So
Mm-hmm.
I did nursing, and my mother got ill in my final year of nursing school.
Mm.
And I was able to access care for her
Oh,
because I
excellent.
was already in the system.
Excellent.
I was also in the
Mhm.
system because I am officious. I decided that I am going to push and I'm going to do whatever
I
it
love
is
it.
to get
Yes.
to get the best for her.
Yes.
So
Yes.
my mother, she died before I completed nursing.
Sorry
Um,
to hear
and
that.
that was like the saddest time in my life. So
Mm-hmm.
forgive me if I tear
Hmm.
up a little.
Oh, please.
Um,
No
so
worries. Hmm.
yeah.
I'm
So
sure she's with you.
yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So she said to me, "Don't worry, you have already passed. You are successful. Don't worry
Ooh.
about it." Yes. So
Okay.
she cheered me along before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother died from kidney failure.
Wow. The
Yes,
irony.
because like me, she had an autoimmune condition. So
Okay.
she didn't have
Okay.
lupus, but she had an autoimmune condition. It's called amyloidosis,
Oh.
and it presents as nephrotic syndrome. That means your kidney and
Mm-hmm.
your some other things are involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it did was to destroy the kidneys. And so my mother could not get to do dialysis because there are more people needing dialysis than we can afford to dialyze. So it wasn't a case of money, it was a case of space. But at the time, the person who was in charge of the unit was not a humanitarian, didn't care. And so the unit is full. And so she died. She died because of that. I still hurt about that. And I still hurt that I didn't have the clout to change that man's mind. And so that that piece. So
Wow.
I believe in solving everybody's problem. And the my base to life is developmental. I believe that everybody has potential, and with the right kind of direction, everybody can become the best that they can be. And so that is the what forms my basis of social health, because there is really no good health without social health. So occupation, whether it's school or work or thing,
Mm-hmm.
community, relationships, we are created to relate. And so
Created to
to
relate.
yes, we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's so
get
true.
into that, get into that place and space
Yeah.
where you can do that. So yeah,
Mhm.
that is my answer to that.
Wow.
So
What a profound
experiential,
answer. I'll be
yes,
thinking about that. Go
yes.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, I'm just saying personal experience
Mm-hmm.
and education. So that's the groundwork. But I did gerontology because I was on my way to do dentistry. Um
Hmm.
and yes, man.
Wow. What a
I
detour.
yes, quite a detour. And so when I did nursing, I did a master's in health management. So
Oh,
I can manage the hospital and that kind of stuff
you sure can.
because that is what it prepares you for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't get no work to manage no hospital. And so immediately after I finished that, I went to do a Master of Public Health because I had
Yeah.
ambition to work with UN and PAHO and those things.
All
And
right.
so I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized something is wrong with the health system.
Mm-hmm.
It lacks social. That is the missing piece. You know, you can't make me
Mm-hmm.
healthy if I can't find my way
Like,
back into society.
that's right. If I can't feed
Yes,
myself, I'm not going to take
yes,
your medicine.
yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, absolutely. And
Exactly.
so I wanted to change my focus.
Mm-hmm.
So on waiting, I was waiting to go to dental school. I got into dental school in Nebraska. So University
Nebraska.
of Nebraska. Yes.
Wow.
And so I was waiting, and the requirement was you should be in an adjoining state that does not offer dentistry to get into University of Nebraska. So you know where Nebraska is. You live in the US. It's in
Yes.
the middle of the US.
Yes.
And so it's there. And it surrounds Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a friend of mine who knew my heart's desire. So dentist let me want to turn dentist. And my friend was studying in the US at the time and sent me a brochure. Happened upon this brochure from Webster University and said, "Look at this. This is Missouri. It's next door to Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
So see if there's anything there so you can qualify to go over to Nebraska." So I'm occupying time. So when I look at the thing and I read it, I saw it says gerontology. First time I seen the word. First time
Wow.
I'm coming to that space. And so when I did nursing, I did geriatrics. So I understand what geriatrics mean.
Okay.
But gerontology is the study of aging and old age, right?
Yes. I
And
had
so
to
it's a
look that up
social
today.
science. It's a social science that involves everything from the womb to the tomb. All right. So it's a very interesting and all empowering thing to study. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I read it, I said, my name is written on this. So I applied and I got into Webster University, which is in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And so when I started to do that, they said, "But you're a full-time student and you're only doing one master's." And I said, "Yes. Can I do another one?" And so that's how I ended up doing
Look at you.
human resource development and organizational development. So that's
Wow.
also social science. So right up my
Okay.
street. So I'm a human resource developer and I'm an organization development. And so that explains how I come to have all these things.
Yes, and so
Yes,
much impact to really help
yes,
people
yes,
because we're going to get to
yes,
your foundation in a minute.
yes.
And I also want to talk about the symptoms that you experienced back in 1998 with lupus before you were diagnosed almost 10 years later, because I think that's important for men and women
Mhm.
to be preventative and see about what they could be feeling, not to be their own doctor, but and be scared,
Yes,
but you know.
yes,
So
yes,
there's some questions in the chat. We have lots of people tuning in. We have DJ
oh, that's
Gaddafi.
good.
Yes, indeed. DJ
Yes.
Gaddafi tuning in. We have Mel Bless tuning in. Ray, all kinds of people in the chat. Let's see. Dawn V, DLC, Shaw Money, Boss Lady Lindita, Farmer George, of course, who actually introduced us. So thank you so much, Farmer George, for introducing us and
Okay.
for being
Mhm.
here. Yes, indeed. All right. So DJ Gaddafi asks, do you work in government service on policy, etc., or in private practice?
Okay, so that answers two parts. I worked with
Okay.
government and I worked in policy and I worked with all of that. So I worked with Office of Disaster Preparedness. I have a lot to do with the policies and the procedures that they are now working with. So I like policy and I like those things and I like developing tools and so on. So the short answer is yes. But I no longer work um as a full-time job with government. So I'm now into my foundation, so I am private. But
Okay.
if they call me, I do consultancies. So if they call me, I am all hands and feet. Yes, so
Let's see. All right. Very good. Would you like to talk about the Floy Foundation, when it was erected? And I know it's affectionately named after your brother and your grandfather. So if you want to talk
yes.
about the attributes that, birthed this foundation and what it actually does, that would be great. And how people can help
But
support it too.
absolutely. That's
Hmm.
the part I like. Right. So
Indeed.
so um to put things in context,
Hmm.
um I've always said I work through pain.
Hmm.
Um, so
When you say
there
you work
is
through pain, sorry to interrupt. When you work through pain, what exactly
all
does
right.
that mean?
So we agree that I'm very educated. right?
Yes.
So we agree on that.
Yes.
But most times when people look at me, they think I'm a fool. So
Why?
I don't know. I think there's a sign. You don't see?
No, I don't. What sign are they seeing?
What sign? Just
So I think there's a
absolutely.
sign that says
They just try to
that
take you
says
as a fool, huh? Wow.
that says
Wow.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that piece is there. And so the you insult me or you hurt me, and I am going to do my best, but I would always do my best anyway because I'm a high achiever, and I like to know, and I also like to know that I know. So I right, so I can give you my references and I can give you all that. So I am
Mm-hmm.
a scholar practitioner. So
Wow.
I I know what I know and that I know that I know. And
Mm-hmm.
but I have to prove to the rest of the world that I know.
Mm,
So it's hard. So
mm,
I go by the name, the title, Dr. Goulborne.
mm-hmm.
But when people really want to put me in my place, them call me Miss Goulborne.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So my
See,
husband,
And do
my
you
husband is
correct
a
them?
medical doctor. Sorry?
Do you correct them, ma'am, and say, no, excuse me,
No.
it's
They're
sure.
good for.
doctor? Depends on your mood.
Depends on my mood.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I just laugh. So
Yeah, that's good too.
my husband is a medical doctor,
Okay.
and not just a medical doctor, he's a psychiatrist.
Oh,
And so yes,
oh, wow.
so when I stand in his presence, they will speak to him. Oh, so we're talking to Dr. Goldberg, and you are Mrs. Goldberg. So that time I will stop them. I said no. When I leave my house, I am Dr. Goldberg. So
Yes.
if you see me outside of my house, I'm Dr. Goldberg. All
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always this piece to put, Um
Uh,
Farmer George has joined our Zoom. Farmer George, if you have any question or comment, let us know, okay? Go
Right.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
So that is my thing. So coming back to answer your question,
Yes.
the foundation, when I came out of my kidney transplant, I decided. So I'm a giver. So I'm always giving and helping people to become the best that they can be. So when I woke up from the kidney transplant, I said I was very excited because you could not wake up, right? And
True.
so yes, and there are many things leading up to that would also prevent me from having a transplant. And so when I woke up, I said, I am going to put all my giving and all what I want to do into a foundation. So it was registered because you have to register it as a limited liability company first. So it was registered in 2022. I had the
Okay.
transplant in 2021. So
Mm-hmm.
moving along, says registered.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back from the transplant and all of that kind of stuff going on and what have you. So always remember I have lupus. So I
Yes.
have lupus. It's important to have that. Lupus doesn't stop me because I will move until the last limb can move.
Mm-hmm.
But it limits me from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because of being
I
tired?
are tired, depressed, all kinds of things,
Okay.
ill in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I in 2022, I left my UE work. I resigned from UE. So UE was my life. It's one of the things that I always wanted to do. And I was in my Aki because what I did at the university is a program that I created. So a program of student success, which involved all that I know and do and that kind of stuff. So I don't teach
Excellent.
content, I teach how to manage content. So there's a
Okay.
whole trail of students who will tell you they were successful at medicine because of me. So I
Mm-hmm.
do have a healthy track record
Mm-hmm.
about helping people to become the best that they can.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, the system changed and I wasn't seeing eye to eye with the person in charge anymore. So I refused the contract and I backed off. But that was very painful for me. A very painful thing. Extremely painful. And so I left and I go register the foundation and I move on. So I respond out of pain in that way.
I see.
So I got depressed. I was depressed for 2 years.
Wow.
And yeah,
What's that look
I was
like?
sorry, what does that look like?
Yeah.
It looks like don't want to talk to anybody, don't want to don't want to get out of the bed, don't want to sleep, don't want to eat,
Wow.
don't want nobody but me.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
looks like all of that.
Wow.
Um, and really, really get to a place where you look into the mirror and you don't know yourself
Mm.
because you've lost so much weight. It's all of that. Depression
Mhm.
is real.
It is.
And
Mhm.
so it's a function of lupus. You get so stressed and you move on. Now, remember, no,
Mhm.
it was my decision to move, but it was still a very painful decision.
Yeah.
And so that pain thing. So I registered the foundation, but I did nothing about it. So fast forward now to 2025.
Mhm.
I became the president of the Lupus Foundation, and that
Excellent.
was a
Congrats.
no, not anymore. I'm no
Oh
longer.
no. Okay.
Yes, that was a toxic relationship,
Oh,
extremely toxic, and
you
so
want to talk
I
about why
gave
that is, or not important
um
anymore?
it's not important anymore, but it is important. It is
Okay.
important because people don't respect you. You remember I spoke about there's a sign that says damn
Cool.
fool, right?
Mhm.
So the people who were in charge at the time felt that the foundation belonged to them and
Mhm.
nobody else should challenge them.
Mhm.
And so I like a good challenge. So I I put up myself to be elected as president. So I was already active in the foundation. I was their spokesperson. I was all of that kind of stuff. So the people liked me and I could do real things, transform people's life. And
Yes.
so the foundation itself wasn't doing that. And I would be doing that. And so I was voted and I came out on top. And they didn't like that because it meant no that I was going to get the spotlight and not them. And so they made it nasty. They made it nasty. It was nasty. It was painful. And
Wow.
so I decided it's not good. I have lupus. I don't need the stress. And clearly, I don't need them. So I went back and I brushed off my foundation. and so so I'm no longer depressed and I decided this is it. I'm going to launch the foundation and
There
move
we go.
forward. So that was how it came about. And
Excellent.
you asked a question
Okay.
about what was happening. So
Yes.
lupus can affect everything. So lupus, I
Mhm.
have systemic lupus erythematosus, and that means it affects my systems. So lupus attacked me, my muscles. So I had a pain in my thigh, my right thigh, that had no rhyme or reason.
Okay.
But with the pain was a little rash. And at the time, I used a steroid, a mild steroid on it, and the rash became bigger.
Oh
So
wow.
I went to a dermatologist and they gave me a strong steroid. And so it just broke down the entire area.
Mm.
And so the tissue became necrotic, which really means rotten,
Oh
which
wow.
really means that you have a big sore
Yeah.
right there. And
Hmm.
so that was how, so that was there. And so every so often I would have something bizarre happening to me. If I go to a new place, I would come up with a rash. I would have fever. I'd have joint pain. But the most important consistent pain was that area on my thigh. So
Okay.
I had to
And
see,
how
yes,
long
go
were
ahead.
you experiencing these symptoms before they were able to diagnose?
All right.
Hmm.
So when the area broke down, I had to see a dermatologist who also specialized in restorative work. So
Okay.
when he saw me, he said, "Oh my God, how are you living with this? This is absolutely so painful."
Mm,
So between all of that, I saw many people and they tell me it's in my head, my mad,
mm,
and so on.
mhm,
It's not
mhm,
real
mhm,
because you can't have a pain in the area that I was having.
mhm,
So I went to surgery, and so they had to take out all that rotten tissue,
mhm.
and they
In your
sent it for
thigh.
test. Yes, in my thigh.
Mhm,
So if you know me very well and you look at me, I wear pants a lot. And if
mhm.
it's close enough, then you will see that I have a sink
Okay.
in the middle of my thigh.
Mhm,
And so he did the surgery, and so next day it got infected and all kinds of stuff, and I went back. And so the first time he did the surgery, he did not save the tissue. Now remember, I'm a nurse, so may expect certain things. I expect certain
right.
standard,
That's
right?
right.
Right, and you know what should happen. So
Correct. Biopsy
I was,
that tissue.
yes, right.
What's going on
So
here?
how could you
Yes,
throw
ma'am.
away my tissue?
Mm-hmm.
And so the response was you you think you have cancer, it's not cancer. And I said, you don't know, and I don't know. So we should send it for histology. So we had to go back to surgery. And I said, this time I am taking my sample myself and I'm going to
Yes.
take it.
Oh, very good.
So,
Very
right.
good.
So I took it, and they came up with a whole lot of things. But the pathologist was a friend of mine, and she called me and she said, this is lupus. And
Wow.
so, yeah. And so
How did you react?
I said, I really don't want to hear that. It is not what I want to hear, but it was something to work with.
And this
And
was a
so,
friend. You can trust her
yes,
diagnosis,
yes,
and she
right,
delivered it with
yes,
care,
right,
bedside manner.
yes. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yes, she was extremely, extremely
Mm-hmm.
caring, and
Yeah.
you know, and so that was how it was diagnosed. But it
And
took years. It took
how
years.
many years? Oh, years. Okay.
Yes.
And
So
then
it's 10
Wait,
years.
nine,
10 years before I was
10?
diagnosed. Yes, like 10.
10 years. Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
And then,
So I'm glad
go
that you
ahead.
mentioned that because I noted in the article that 500,000 people in Jamaica are suffering with lupus now.
Mm,
Yes.
It seems like an epidemic to me. I don't know what the stats are here in the United States, but
Um,
that's a lot of people who probably don't know the symptoms. And Naima mentioned that earlier, and that was what I wanted to focus on. If you could
mm,
identify the symptoms so people could know what to look for and
mm.
begin to address this at an earlier stage.
Okay, so so lupus like aging. Some are gerontologists, remember?
yes.
Lupus, lupus like aging is very individualized. So when you read the textbook, persons who are living with lupus, the classic sign is that they have a butterfly rash right here on the face. So it looks like a butterfly. It sits between below the eyes and between the nose sits between it. So it has wings and it has that. So that's a classic sign. But you see me, I don't have a butterfly rash.
No.
Um, because God loves me. If I had if I had a butterfly rash, you wouldn't be seeing me today. So my butterfly is on my thigh. So
Okay.
the way the tissue got eaten out with lupus and how they had to navigate to remove the bad tissue has formed a butterfly. So I have a butterfly on my thigh.
Wow.
So but that's there. So you
Mm-hmm.
have the symptoms that you look for, um headache,
Mm-hmm.
you could have seizure, you could have unexplained fever, you could have joint pain, you could have a rash on the skin, you could have just anything bizarre. You wake up and something weird up, or you go to this place and you get very sick because it's an autoimmune response. And
Yes.
so you wake up one day and the body decides that is a foreign body.
Yeah. And it
And so,
attacks.
and
Mm-hmm.
it attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was always there, but it is a mad child. It doesn't understand that, yeah, man, it was there yesterday before. So it
Correct.
attacks it, right? And
Mm.
so, that. So when you find yourself, the best advice for people, when you find yourself having repeatedly episodes of strange things, ask your doctor to think lupus. There is just a I don't know if it's a fear for doctors to diagnose lupus, right? They skirt around and they tell you all kinds of foolishness, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
want to tell you it is lupus. But that is basically how you should pick up. You know, you don't do anything, you have a fever, you wake up, your hand can't move, you can't come out of the bed,
Mm-hmm.
or you suddenly have kidney failure or heart failure or
Yeah.
whatever, or you have seizure. You've never had seizure before, and you
Mm-hmm.
have this massive seizure or a mild seizure, just anything, or stomach
Mm-hmm.
ache, all kinds of things, because lupus
So
really has no behavior.
it
Or
So
mimics a lot
let's
of different symptoms. That's kind of scary.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it is. I mean, this
Um,
is probably why you're looking at 500,000 people walking around with lupus because there's so many different symptoms. It's just hard to
mm,
detect, even yourself. Okay, you wake up and you have a muscle pain. That's one thing. Are they
mm,
multiple things happen at the same time? That's you say, well, I have this fever, I've got muscle pain here, I've got this rash over here. I know that these are some of the symptoms of lupus. Maybe I need to go and see if this is something that I have.
yeah.
Could it be that simple?
Um, it doesn't have to be multiple things happening at the same time.
mhm.
Okay.
It could just be one thing that's repeated.
Yeah.
Or like for example, so my jobs that I've had, whether it's with government or it's with the university, involve traveling. So I travel the world.
Mhm.
And traveling could also mean I travel inland, and it means going to a different hotel because it's not your home. And
Mhm.
so you wake up the next morning and you have a Christmas tree rash. So that
Oh
is
no.
how it started to present for me. I have a
Okay.
Christmas tree rash and I have a fever.
Mhm.
And you kind of say, oh, how does this make sense?
Mhm.
Right? And so it's the Christmas tree rash is classic. That's how psoriasis, another medical illness, presents itself.
Mhm.
And so you see it, you kind of wonder, you have fever, you don't feel so good, but you're at work, so you have to go to work. And then the next time you go into a different hotel, it happens again. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing, but
Right.
just something that is outside of your normal expectation. Or you could go and the first few days you have diarrhea and you're vomiting and nobody else not having none of that.
Mhm.
And it is thing. And so whenever you encounter something new or something stressful, you could have a
Yeah.
response that don't make sense to anybody else.
Right.
Or a
And I
wasp could
think
bite you and you end up with serious swelling. You could end up in the hospital or so on because your response to the wasp bite is so dramatic.
mhm.
So anything outside of the normal that keep occurring, you could use that. So you don't necessarily have to have multiple symptoms. So now that I'm diagnosed, for example, in December, I was so ill. I had lupus affecting my brain, so it's called lupus cerebritis. It was affecting my heart, so I was into lupus carditis. I was having heart failure,
Mm.
and and it was also threatening my kidney. And so you can have multiple things happening too,
Right.
but you don't have to look for the multiplicity of them. But I
Mhm.
have lupus, systemic lupus. So more than likely,
I
more
see.
than one system is operating at one
Right.
time.
This
Plus,
sounds
the
very hard
heart and
to
the
diagnose.
kidneys are connected anyway. So if one doesn't
Mhm.
work, the other will be affected. What were you gonna say, Mom?
Sounds very hard to diagnose. What's the best way to determine that? I mean, you go to a doctor. What would a doctor look for to say this is lupus? What
Listening. That's what they need to do. Listen.
Right.
Listen to
And
your
that's why, and because it affects mostly women, they are
yes,
not listening because
yes,
we
yes,
have a history of being hysterical.
yes,
When
yes,
people say that they're in
yes,
pain when they're trying to get fibromyalgia
yes,
diagnosed, they don't diagnose that either. It's a
yes,
so-called women's disease, and it's
yes.
autoimmune. It's
Mhm,
generated usually by the environment, which a lot of
mhm.
people don't want to admit. And so that's
Absolutely.
another reason why it's
Yes.
not diagnosed. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That
yes.
just brings me to another question because
Mhm.
can it be environmental? Again, a half a million
Yes.
people.
Yes. It's
Yes.
more more I would think it's more environmental than genetic, even though genetic predisposition is a factor.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's largely environmental.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Farmer George,
just
while you're on the call, did you have any comment or question for your colleague here that you introduced us to? We have 15 minutes left.
No, I don't have no questions. I'm
Yeah.
learning.
You're learning. What are you
Yes.
learning? What's the most important thing you've learned thus far?
Um, my knowledge of lupus has not been as extensive as I thought it was. I didn't know it was primarily a woman's disease, as you described it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um, a friend of mine lost her daughter at a very young age last year to lupus,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, um, with Jackie Lynn having that's why I became aware of it in the first
Mhm.
instance. And that was the second person I know to have had it. And she died at a
Mhm.
very young age. So Dion is very blessed. Dr. Dion is very blessed.
Hi,
Yeah, to
Farmer George. I never know you had that name.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're learning something today.
We're
That's
all
a
learning today. Go
that's a
ahead.
name I adopted from a elderly gentleman from my community when he passed
Mhm.
away, and
Mhm.
in honor of him, I used that name.
Hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
because he always go
Okay.
on and says, "My name is Farmer George."
Yes, yes,
I,
yes,
I really like that, and so I decided to
yeah.
use that name.
Oh, okay, sir.
Absolutely.
Good
Yes.
to see you,
So
though.
All right, I'm in the flesh. I'm in the flesh.
in the place, yes. So we have
Yes,
about 15 minutes left. I wish we
yes.
had another hour. You are so inspirational, so interesting, so confident, so knowledgeable. We could talk to you about so many things. I want to break it down to people. You were on dialysis for
Mhm.
8 years, and when I read
Yes.
that this afternoon,
Mhm.
or sorry,
Mhm.
yesterday, it sat with me until even today to really
Mhm.
imagine you having to give up your life literally week to week for 8 years, what it felt like mentally, physically, socially, maybe isolating. So I was like just thinking about that. But then on the
Mhm.
other side, I think, wow, this is how this foundation was born. She was solution
Yes.
focused. She was in that
Mhm.
chair receiving whatever it is
Mhm.
that, oh, the blood being clean. That's what's happening. I was like, what's
Yes.
happening again? You were doing that and actually formulating plans to combat what you were actually going through. So you
Mhm.
mentioned gaps in care. What were those
Yes.
gaps in care like, and how did you decide that you were going to strategically remove them for other people?
Okay, so so first, I did not give up my life. I have always lived. So I the for the
Hmm.
8 years that I was on dialysis, I worked at the University of the West Indies.
Hmm.
So I worked on campus and I dialyzed at the hospital. Now,
Okay.
most people would say
Walking
I
distance?
dialyzed. Sorry?
Is it walking distance from
It
the?
is. It
Okay.
is. But I
Hmm.
couldn't walk. For most of
Oh
those years, I was
gosh.
in a wheelchair.
Oh.
Yes, yes. So I
Wow.
walk. Yesterday, I walked 9K. So,
Yesterday?
yes, yesterday I walked 9K.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Yes. So I share that to say, most people when I started dialysis, I was so ill. So I had a lull. I had a 4 year lull, but I still worked with my student, but not actively. So after that, I went back to full-time work. So I work full-time and I dialyze 3 times per week. Now, it is not possible. I'm going to tell you it's not possible, but it's me. So I do the impossible.
Overachiever.
Yes. So I found out very early that my best days were my dialysis days, but they were also my worst days. So I would, by the time, so I dialyze every other day. So by the time I dialyzed in the evening, so I went to dialysis in the evening. So I worked all day and then dragged myself to dialysis.
Ooh, ooh, Lord, no.
Yes. And so after dialysis, I'm totally useless. I
Yeah.
can't do anything. I'm very ill. And the morning of the dialysis, I am also very ill. So I
Is that
arranged my,
everybody? Is that
huh?
everybody or
Right.
No,
Is
everybody's
that
that
the
was
different?
me.
common?
Some people
Oh,
come alive when they dialyze. I die. I'm the cat. I'm the rag that the cat drags in.
oh gosh.
So
Okay.
so the morning after dialysis, I can't do any active work. So I would ease into work a little later, and I would just primarily see students, so the one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But per adventure, I had to lecture. I would end up fainting,
Mm. Oh my
blood pressure falling, that kind of stuff. So dialysis was a very terrible thing for me. It was the worst time of my life. And so
God.
while I was on dialysis, my aim was to have a kidney transplant.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an excellent nephrologist who said to me, give it 2 years because it's lupus induced and it should correct itself. 2 years passed, it didn't. And so my aim always was to have a transplant.
Yeah.
But in Jamaica, you have to have a blood relative to give you a kidney. You couldn't get it from a friend, and you couldn't certainly get it from, you can't buy it. So that's a system. But
Mm-hmm.
my nephrologist is, as I said, excellent. So he introduced me to a surgeon who is Jamaican by birth,
Mm-hmm.
but Trinidadian by nationality. And my nephrologist is from Trinidad, but he's a Jamaican now. And
Mm-hmm.
so he introduced me to him. And so I had to find a donor. So I got a donor. And so after 8 tries to get a donor, then I finally got one. So it was a lot of effort to put into that.
My goodness.
And
Yeah. I was so
but at the
happy.
end, I didn't get my donor's kidney. I got somebody else's kidney.
Oh wow.
And so yes,
What?
yes, that's a whole story. You have to call me back.
Yeah. We'll have to do part two. You'll have to come back for
Yes,
sure, because
Yeah.
yeah,
you have to call
we
me
haven't
back
Yeah.
to
touched
talk
the
about
surface.
that.
You have an
But
autobiography that we won't even be able to talk about tonight, so you have to come back. Okay.
yes, I have to come back. So while I was on dialysis, I met real people that had real social issues. They would come, they can't afford a meal,
Mm.
um, they would eat bread and butter, and it was not anchor butter. It was bread. it was, I'm sorry. It was bread
Oh
and
no.
salted butter. And
Mm-hmm.
so they would say to me, Doc, taste it, man, taste it. And I would taste it and I say, oh my God, how you could eat
Why are
this?
you eating this?
And so
Mm-hmm.
I became very familiar with the palpable needs of these people.
Mm-hmm.
So they come to dialysis because they can't do any better. They're privileged to come because we can't afford to dialyze everybody. And
Right.
so they get dialysis, but it's really not the best. I can compare because I've
Yes.
dialyzed in the US. And
What's
so
the
I know
difference?
what good
Like,
dialysis is compared to that. So there's a whole lot of real suffering. And most of them do not have the education that I have to get a good job so you can manipulate the system and say, I will work at this time and I will go after work
mm,
and
mm-hmm.
and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still give 100% even though you're only 30%. And so when I dialyzed, I was 30%, but I still give 100%. And so it
Mm,
is that.
mm,
So I was touched by that real need. And
mm-hmm.
so when I did a transplant, I said, this is how I could help one or two persons to go and have a transplant. I could not have had a transplant if the community never helped me,
Yes.
right? So I provided most of the money, but a friend of mine who lives in the US set up a GoFundMe for me.
Oh, great.
And Farmer George, um, so Farmer George appears and disappears, but he appears always when I need him. So
Oh,
Farmer George came, and I
Mhm.
said to him, I need the script to be written for the GoFundMe. And so told him what I had, and he said, "No, nobody not going to get no money." And so Farmer George wrote the script.
Okay.
And so out of that, I got 24 thousand US dollars.
Go
Okay?
ahead.
Yes.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
yes. So
Nice.
the transplant itself is
Hmm.
120,000 US dollars, but that is just for the surgery.
Wow.
It doesn't
Wow.
take into consideration all the other things that you have to do.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
my husband and I, um, had out of our own pockets 80,000 out of that 120,000. So we have 24,000 add to that, but
Wow.
it's still short. And
Yes.
so some other friends and so on gave. So the community came together.
Hmm.
But I lived in the US during the
Hmm.
time of the transplant.
Okay.
I had to do dialysis up to the point of the transplant.
Hmm.
I broke my leg while I was preparing for the transplant.
Yeah. And
So,
it rains, it
the-
pours.
yes, so many
Mhm.
things happen. So
Yeah.
I'm saying if there was not a community, I would not have been able to have
Exactly.
a transplant.
Absolutely.
So I put all the things that I have together,
Yeah.
and because I'm a sociologist,
Yes.
I also am resourceful. I know how to find resources. I also
Hmm.
know how to command resources.
Hmm.
And so I said, I don't just want to help people to do dialysis or provide groceries for them, which is what we do now.
Right.
Um, I want to also be able to help them to say, here is even at 60,000, you know, as
Hmm.
a base. And let me see how I can help some other people garner some resources so you can have a transplant. And so that is the aim in terms of that. So find solutions for people who are in kidney failure. And so that's that. And lupus is one of the causes of kidney failure.
Right.
So,
Right.
right. So I look at people with lupus because I have lupus. And I look at people with other autoimmune conditions because autoimmune conditions run in my family.
Oh, they
And
do.
yes, it
And do
does.
you think
Remember,
that's
my mother died from an autoimmune condition and died from kidney failure. And
right?
so, and I also look at people with mental illness because of the passion that I have for people who are marginalized and mistreated
Yes.
and and so on. So that's what the foundation does.
Hmm.
And it is a cash what is it? A cash heavy foundation. It needs money in
Yes.
order to be able to do what it does.
How do you
So
get so we go ahead. You're going to talk about how
yeah,
to help because we
so
have about 3 minutes, and then I
yes.
also wanted to know two things in the 3 minutes, right? How
All right.
people can help you, and then what it
Mm.
was for you the first week after your transplant in terms of how it took, how the time frame of how you have to wait for it to take, and then how you were able to adjust.
All right.
Or is that for
So
another show? I
so
don't
so
know.
quick. Yeah, no, I'm gonna answer all of them. So
Okay.
quickly, right now I feed 30 people every month. So we successfully did that in
Hmm.
March.
Hmm.
So the feeding now for April needs to happen. And it is in my own money, roughly $25,000 per person. So that is to feed the those people. So it is doing that at present.
Hmm.
To move, we get funding for people from sponsors. We get funding. Most of the money that goes into the foundation right now is my money, but I
Okay.
don't have none. So it is God's resources. And so that's it. How I felt after the transplant, my transplant took immediately.
Wow.
So when I woke up out of the transplant, I had tubes and drips in every part. And I had a catheter in that was producing gallons of urine.
Mm.
So when they turned to me, I had a catheter in at the time because my fistula had blocked. And they said to me a few days after, let's do you want to keep the catheter for the dialysis? I said no. I will never go back to dialysis. This is it. I am now a
Why,
transplant patient
why did they
and I
ask
have
you?
new life.
I'm
moving
not sure
forward.
why they asked you that.
No, they wouldn't, because as you say, it's for some people it takes some time to take. And so the
Okay.
the the transplant does not have to be successful. So it comes successfully in stages. So if you
Mm-hmm.
wake up, it's one level of success
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have to wake up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's an
Mm-hmm.
8 hour surgery. You don't have to wake up.
Oh my
All
God.
right. So if you wake up, that's a plus.
Mm-hmm.
If you live the first week, you might live the first month.
Woo.
If you
Wow.
live the first month, you might live the first year.
My
So this
goodness.
is my 5th year since I was transplanted.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. And now you're fine. There is no other markers, right? You're fine.
Except I still have lupus. So
Yes, you
right now I'm
do.
speaking to you,
Mm-hmm.
I have lupus pneumonitis. So I have pneumonia as a result of lupus. And
Oh,
so you hear me cough. It is not because I am thin, it's because I have pneumonia. So I still have lupus, so anything can still happen to me.
Well, we're manifesting that it won't, and you'll continue
Right.
to get better because all of
Yes.
the positivity that you're pouring
Yes.
into people, it has
Yes.
to affect you
yeah.
Yes.
internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I'm now up to 200% of my potential.
excellent. Only 200? No way. I love your energy and your confidence. It's infectious. You can move
Yes.
mountains, and you're doing
Amen.
that. And
Yes.
it's just been a
Yes.
pleasure to have you on the show, and really have people understand more about your plight, more about your foundation, more
Mhm.
about lupus, and we want you to come back so we could talk some more about your book and what your foundation is going to be doing this year. I'm sure you
Yes.
have other interviews coming up, um,
Yes.
and how you'll be marketing your book, how you'll be,
Yes.
maybe you have a health fair coming up that me,
Yes.
Primal
That,
might want to
that
be.
too.
So yeah, let's talk. Let's
Yes.
talk. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Our
Happy to
pleasure.
meet you.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes,
Thank
good
you.
luck with everything. So, coming up after the Matrix tonight, we will see what that will be because Jermaine Hard Drive is not going to be able to make it. But we like surprises on Primal. So we'll see what's happening right after us. And then it's going to be DLC coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern with the Heart of Soul. We like surprises on Primal. So we'll see what's happening right after us. And then it's going to be DLC coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern with the Heart of Soul. We like surprises on Primal. So we'll see what's happening right after us. And then it's going to be DLC coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern with the Heart of Soul. We like surprises on Primal. So we'll see what's happening right after us. And then it's going to be DLC coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern with the Heart of Soul. We like surprises on Primal. So we'll see what's happening right after us. And then